Good afternoon, everyone. This is my persuasive speech on mental health in college athletes. Mental health challenges among college athletes are a very serious and often overlooked issue, and I feel like universities should take action by improving the mental health resources that athletes have access to in order to reduce the stigma that having negative health problems can have, and also to create a better structured support system for us athletes that might need it and might not feel like we have that, help or outreach available to us. I feel like being like as a college athlete, it may look exciting from the outside and seeing what we get to do by playing in the games and the practices every day, but many athletes silently do suffer from intense mental, pressure and mental disorders every day. A lot of student athletes, or every student athlete, is expected to perform at a very high level in their sport, maintain their academics, and also balance their personal lives and be a leader in their communities all at the same time. Now, according to the National Collegiate Athletic Association, otherwise known as the NCAA, many college athletes will report experiencing high levels of stress, anxiety, and overall emotional exhaustion throughout as they go throughout their seasons or their school years. Despite this, mental health throughout athletes is not taken seriously his physical health or taken seriously his other people's mental health. Not only does this issue affect athletes, but it also affects their performance and it affects their relationships and their lives. If mental health is not looked into seriously, it could have very serious um, and detrimental effects. And I believe that it should just be something that's explored more and something that is explained more to us college athletes, and something that's explained to how it's not, a burden or a crutch to have. First, I want to explain the problem of mental health among athletes, and then I want to get to the causes. Then I want to get to what some of the main causes for these struggles that college athletes face, and then I want to present a solution that I feel like could improve the situation, or at least could elicit change in the scenarios that we face. And I think one of the main problems in mental health and issue is just how common it is, and how we do not, try to take a stand to it. We don't try to let other student athletes, or us that suffer through it, we don't let student athletes know that it's okay, that they're not suffering alone. A lot of college athlete or student athletes experience anxiety, depression, or other mental illnesses due to burnout, or due to over expectations, or just due to just being overworked and feeling unimportant sometimes. According to another study done by the NCAA in 2023, a large number of athletes also reported feeling mentally overwhelmed during their seasons and throughout their school year because of how much was being put on their plate, and how they felt like they had no avenue to let out those feelings. Even though these issues are as common as they are, many athletes avoid seeking help because of the negative societal view that it has as an athlete suffering, or they don't want to be looked at as weak by their coaches or teammates. You know, Going through mental health has had the stigma of appearing weak, and being a man in today's society, I know that suffering or crying or going through certain things might be looked at as weak, or it might make you look like you aren't ready, like this might not be for you, when often we just struggle. Student athletes struggle with mental health just like anyone else, and it's just not looked at as seriously. Sometimes the lack of support in these mental health issues can lead to worsening mental health, and still negatively impacts your athletic performance, your daily life, and your academic performance. And the seriousness of the problem is clear. I feel like it's also important to understand what's causing, like the direct causes to these, mental problems that student athletes face. And while there are several and definitely major factors on what causes the student athletes to suffer, mentally. I feel like one of the first things is the demanding schedules that we're given, with our practices, traveling, games, classes, community service, and then sneaking in free time, schoolwork. It leaves very little time to, taking care of yourself, mentally, physically. you know, you just don't have as much time as the average person to really care for your own self, because you're so focused on your responsibilities. Second off, I feel like athletes face constant pressure to perform, whether it's from their coaches, fans, the crowd, the school. You know, you're on scholarship. You know, they're paying you to do something, so obviously it's expected that you do it. But it's also expected that you do it without complaining because of the opportunity that we're given. While at the end of the day, that's just unrealistic. There will be bad days. There will, be times where the pressure might feel like it's too much, and the athletes are, it's kind of just not been normalized for them to be able to feel those emotions, and it's kind of just been normalized for them to internalize it, and that's what I feel like is part of the big issue. And I feel like these injuries, or I feel like these mental injuries could have, they have lifelong or long-lasting, emotional impacts on, student athletes. And also, according to a study done by Watson in 2016, the strong connection between, an athlete's identity and their personal and their performance on or off the field strongly, is involved with their mental, their mental standing and their vulnerability on the court or their vulnerability mentally. They can sway one another's effects. My third point is really the solution on how I feel like universities can take a stronger stand in or stronger steps in order to support students' mental or student athlete mental health, and I feel like that's just implementing mandatory mental health check-ins, whether that's with psychiatrists or just people that we can talk to kind of, or that's faculty members, just people that we can talk to, just so, that we can get some of the things that we feel off our plate, because we know that you might not, there's things that you might feel but you can't say to your coach, or you might not want to say to your teammate, but just just so that you're able to not have to carry the stress of everything that you go through on a day-to-day basis. I also feel like universities should sponsor more counselors or sports psychologists who strictly understand the struggles that we as athletes face. As long as I feel like, as well as I also feel like schools just employ direct counselors that can work with you based off your major, and they can understand you more to a deeper understanding. I feel like we should also have counselors and psychiatrists based off like your sport that can help you, and they can walk with you, and they can understand where you're coming from as a college athlete that's suffering with mental health issues, and they can be there for you. I feel like athletic programs should actively work to just reduce the stigma of going through mental health issues by just having and encouraging open conversations about mental health, whether that's with men, women, or just athletes in general. I think by taking these steps, universities can create a healthier environment for student athletes to feel comfortable in being vulnerable in the fact that they're suffering, or being vulnerable in helping someone else get help. I think by addressing both of these causes and implementing an effective solution, colleges can begin to improve, how they take care of mental health when it comes to athletes and just students in general. In conclusion, I think the mental health when it comes to athletes is a very serious issue that deserves more attention, and it also deserves to be looked at more. I think that student athletes face unique pressures, and they face unique societal standards that not many other people can relate to. Not many other people have done what we've done, and not many other people can do what we can do in the capacity that we do it. And so some people might not understand, or they might not, they just might not have an understanding like another athlete will on the struggles that they are going through, and the mental struggles that they might be going through in their schedule. Today I explained the problem of mental health and struggling with mental health among college athletes. I discussed the major causes behind it, and I also discussed solutions that I've presented that I feel like can improve the situation. At the end of the day, I feel like athletes, we aren't just competitors, and I feel like we aren't just investments. We're human beings at the end of the day, and I feel like just like our physical health is taken to importance, our mental health should be just as important as that, and I feel like it deserves attention, care, and support, so we can all be upheld as family members of society. Thank you so much for listening to my speech.